The Bitcoin price is going to go much higher, but that's not very insightful. I mean, if you're watching this, you're probably in agreement in that. Can we be a little bit more technical, a little bit more specific with that prediction? So, first and foremost, we'll start here on the global M2 versus Bitcoin chart because Bitcoin's potential price appreciation does depend largely on the amount of increase in liquidity and global capital that is available for investment assets. Now, what we can see very clearly is global M2 and Bitcoin have a clear and obvious correlation, more of a causation from the sense that as global M2 is increasing, we typically see, usually with a little bit of a lag, Bitcoin increasing as well. And likewise, on the contrary, once we see a contraction in global M2 or essentially global money, circulating money and cash equivalents of less than $100,000, we usually see Bitcoin struggling. But how can we use this data to potentially forecast where Bitcoin's price may be going? Because yes, we can see as one's increasing, the other's likely not too far behind. But is there a way we can almost gauge how high Bitcoin could go based on the trajectory of liquidity? Now, it's something we've covered quite a lot on the channel historically, and that is almost measuring Bitcoin versus other real assets. I mean, if we look at property priced in Bitcoin, this is the median US house price, we can see even in spite of all of the bear markets, all of the downside price action, all of the obituaries written on behalf of Bitcoin, it's really trended in one direction, and that's down and to the right. US house prices have lost considerable value compared to Bitcoin, meaning if you'd have held Bitcoin since, say, back here at the start of 2015, and a median home in the US would have cost you about 1,300 Bitcoin-ish, today that same median house is about 5.3 Bitcoin. So even though we have these big cyclical swings in price action, clearly Bitcoin is trending in the right direction. But I think the reason why this most recent cycle felt particularly underwhelming, we'll say, is due to the fact that many assets were outpacing Bitcoin. If we look to commodities like gold or stock indexes like the S&P 500 and the NASDAQ, if I just go over to TradingView here, what we can see is the Bitcoin returns just in percentage gains since 2019. Now, what we can see is, if I get it just about right, the returns since that bear market low in 2019, it's about 2,275%. It's on the y-axis over there and straight above me. Might be a little hard to see, but it's currently at 2,275. But that's measuring against fiat currency, the US dollar. Now, we're looking at global M2. If you look at US M2, it's a very similar story. You can look at CPI numbers, inflation numbers. Fiat currencies are debasing, they're losing purchasing power. So if we're measuring something with a fixed supply and a decreasing inflationary rate, and we're measuring it against something that's consistently losing purchasing power, then it gives us almost this skewed performance basis, because measuring something that's even staying stagnant versus the US dollar should, in theory, increase in valuation. So what we can do is actually measure Bitcoin versus global M2. This is this green line. Now, what we can see is it's a much different story. If I just hide this so we can't see the orange line and we're just looking at global M2, what we can see is the returns of Bitcoin versus global M2 are actually considerably less. If we align it up just about right, so it was the maximum returns versus the fiat currency, which was 2,275, then Bitcoin's return when measured in global M2 over that same period was about 1,372. So we're talking about 900% difference in returns, which is fairly substantial. And if we look at the Bitcoin price action as we currently are today, as I filmed this around $75,500, we can see we're definitely above that previous all-time high we set in that 21-22 cycle. But if we measure versus global M2, we can see we're actually notably beneath the previous cycle high, meaning our relative purchasing power, our comparative buying power with Bitcoin has actually diminished over the past 5 years compared to that prior cycle high. Now, of course, if you can play the cycles in any sort of accurate way, then you'd have massively outperformed this. Bitcoin, even though we do have these big drawdowns, does provide still hundreds, if not thousands of percent returns. But again, if we look at specific metrics, specific benchmarks to measure against. It's a very similar story. Here is Bitcoin measured in the S&P 500. And we can see global M2 actually undersells the lack of returns, real returns that we've had over the past few years. And interesting enough, that double peak cycle isn't so much a double peak anymore when we measure it in terms of real purchasing power versus, again, a comparable benchmark, something we're very strongly correlated to in the S&P 500. And it's a very similar story versus the NASDAQ, versus gold, which I think paints a really interesting picture, considering the fact that Bitcoin has this narrative of being a digital gold, being this inflationary hedge. We can see in this most recent cycle, we barely broke above the previous cycle all-time high, which we have to be honest is disappointing to see. And even though we've had about a 52% retracement from the all-time high to that local low we said around $60,000 in USD terms, versus gold, that retracement was actually over 70%. So this is why it really felt a lot worse than it was in reality, because when we see other assets, when we see other people's investments gaining considerable ground as we're stagnating or even declining, then again, it really feels bad. But probably the most stark one here is the Bitcoin versus silver chart. Now, of course, Bitcoin has this narrative of being a digital gold, but realistically, silver is a more realistic target, at least in the next cycle or two, given the fact that at its peak, it had around a $7 trillion market cap. Now, it has retraced a fair bit from that point. But if we look at the 2017 all-time high for Bitcoin, Bitcoin versus silver is beneath that, meaning if you had have bought silver instead of Bitcoin at the peak we had in 2017, nearly 9 years ago, and held silver, you'd have outperformed every Bitcoin top buyer. And if we look to the previous cycle lows, we can see we bottomed out at pretty much the exact same. So even if you'd have timed the market to perfection and bought the exact cycle low, there was a point where you'd have still actually been down compared to silver. Now, of course, these are quite extraordinary time for commodities, especially precious metals and oil. We've had some massive rallies to the upside, but still, this kind of really hits home that you kind of need to try and play the cycles to some extent, or you can get left behind. But one thing I've been working on a lot in the background, if we just go back to the BTC chart, is rather than just looking through the lens of gold or US equities or global M2, if we look at Bitcoin through the lens of global wealth, then it can paint, I think, an even more accurate picture. So what we've got here is a metric I've been working on. Now, it is a little small to see. I can't actually make it any bigger. But what we can see, this is global capital. And this is measuring equities, bonds, global M2 real estate, gold, private markets, pension assets, forex reserves, sovereign wealth funds, and other markets like alternate cryptocurrencies, art, collectibles, etc. Now, all of that totals to around $557 trillion. Now, what is interesting is if we look at the compounded annual growth rate of global M2 over the past 10 years, it's been about 6.2%. But if we measure global M2 not just in raw trillions of dollar terms, which is currently around 127 trillion, if instead we measure it as a percentage of all global capital, we can actually see it's been losing ground over the past few years, which indicates markets like equities and bonds and commodities like gold and real estate have actually been compounding at a greater rate of return, indicating that global M2 has actually been shrinking as a proportion of global capital. One interesting thing to note is we're currently quite close to the previous bottoms we've had in the last two cycles before the money printers really start going on. So I won't go too much into that, but just a potential turning point we can see there. But what we can do is if we, again, measure Bitcoin rather than just measuring it in US dollar terms, if we measure it as the percentage of global wealth, we can see right now it's 0.27%. Just above a quarter of 1% of all global capital. As I film this, current market cap of Bitcoin is about 1.52 trillion. But again, interesting points we can see. We actually peaked in July of 2025, and that high we had in October was actually lower in terms of relative purchasing power. So if we're measuring Bitcoin in terms of its elapsed time of time-based capitulation and price-based capitulation, again, we can see the price-based capitulation was slightly steeper, but the time-based capitulation at this point in time is 317 days, very close to that kind of typical one-year bear market that we see. Now, what we can do is take this one step further. Because what we can do is almost map out Bitcoin's historic trajectory in terms of global wealth. What we can see is clearly it's very similar to the USD chart, but there are some little differences. And one thing we also need to take into consideration is we're not measuring against a fixed target. We can see global M2, that money printer, is going consistently. But as well as that, new companies are arising. We're going to get a SpaceX IPO of potentially trillions of dollars. AI stocks are going crazy. Precious metals have just continued to eat more and more capital. So unless Bitcoin can actually gain relative strength versus all of these assets, then it's not going to feel like we're really gaining ground. So what we can do is, if I just quickly go back here, is if we actually look at the circulating supply of Bitcoin, because what we can do is map out forward based on the historic trajectory of Bitcoin's allocation of global capital and measure that out to, say, 2030. So we can try and gain 1% of global wealth. Now, right now within this table, we can see if we were to regain the previous all-time high, which in US dollar terms is about $126,000, but given the fact global capital has been increasing over the past few months, right now that'd be close to about $135,000. So unless Bitcoin can reclaim this, we're not actually going to feel like we've really made a new all-time high in terms of comparable or relative purchasing power. But currently 1% of global capital would send Bitcoin to about $278,000. Now, if we were to reach gold parity, this would be about $1.6 million. And then in the middle there, I have 3% of capital, which is about the recommended allocation from BlackRock and Fidelity and other major global investment firms of what the potential allocation to Bitcoin for everyday investors should be, which I think is a little on the low side, but that would take us to around $834,000. But I digress. If we go back to the circulating supply chart and look at potentially how much Bitcoin supply may be, I mean, this is pretty obvious to forecast. In fact, I'm just going to cheat and use something someone already else has put together. But what we can do is if we just go over to Excel over here, and what I've got is this linear regression tool. So this is mapping out the historic trajectory of Bitcoin as a percentage of global wealth. And as we said, right now it's about 0.27%, but we can almost map out this trajectory. We can look at where it's going to be at, say, 2030 or the next halving, or when it's going to surpass 1%. Now, if we just scroll all the way down here, we can see it is a little small. I'll make it a little bit bigger so you can read it a bit easier. If we scroll up, we can see we're on pace to surpass 1% of global capital on the 5th of May 2030, just under 4 years' time. If we go towards the end of 2030, we can see it's projected to be at about 1.15%, which is still pretty small in the grand scheme of things, 1.15% of global capital. But like I said, we can almost work backwards and look at the percentage of global capital we're on track to gain, but then also look at the circulating supply, which at the end of 2030 is going to be somewhere around 20,560,000 Bitcoin. But one thing we need to consider, like I said, is we're not looking at a fixed target. The global capital is always increasing. So if I look at the current global wealth, which is let's just round up, $557 trillion, and we're going to times it by the 10-year compounded annual growth rate of global capital, which is about 6.66%, and we're going to multiply it by, I'll put it to the power of about 4.6, that's 4.6 years, which would take us to the end of 2030. Then the future projected global capital will be about $747 trillion. Now, again, we're looking for just over 1% of that. If I go back here, 1.1551%. So if I go multiply that by 0.0115551%, gives about $8.6 trillion. But again, we need to look at the circulating supply of Bitcoin at that point in time. So just to make this a little bit easier, I'm going to times this so we can see it in trillion-dollar terms, and then divide it by the circulating supply of Bitcoin we'll likely see at that date, which is 20.56 million. And that gives us a Bitcoin price target of around $420,000 by the end of 2030. Now, is this overly optimistic? I actually don't think so. I think if Bitcoin can continue to grow in the way it has, I think the previous cycle was somewhat anomalous given the fact that we saw consistent liquidity providing almost exit capital for those long-term holders. We're seeing more institutional holders. We're seeing more and more bullish fundamentals. But based on the current price action, if Bitcoin can reclaim this kind of pedestal that it deserves to be on, then based on the current price, that's a 5.55x in today's terms, which is a crazy amount of returns and still provides arguably the best asymmetric opportunity we see anywhere else. So, as I said, it's a little disappointing over the past few years to have seen Bitcoin potentially underperform what we were maybe anticipating. But we can clearly see that the trajectory is still in the right direction, and that is up and to the right. And if Bitcoin can continue to eat away at this global capital share, continue to grow and continue to have these positive fundamental changes to the network, then I do think it is just a matter of time, and $420,000 by the end of 2030 does have a nice ring to it. So just to summarize, if we measure the right thing, which is Bitcoin, versus the wrong thing, which is fiat, we can get a skewed perspective on the real returns that we've been experiencing, or how much our purchasing power is actually increasing by in comparable or relative terms. And what we can see is measuring BTC versus global wealth shows that we're still only a tiny asset in the grand scheme of invested capital. And if you saw this analysis and thought this seemed unreasonable, then do just take in mind gold in the past 2 years increased its market cap by about $20 trillion. That's over 10 times the market cap of Bitcoin right now in just 2 years. Silver had a very similar trajectory, going from just a few $1 trillion, not far off Bitcoin's market capitalization, to around $7 trillion. That did almost a 4x in about a year. And we're talking about 4.5 years for Bitcoin to about a 5.5x, which is again lower than the compounded annual growth rate we've historically seen for Bitcoin. So this is still providing kind of the realistic diminishing returns and almost lengthening cycle theory, but measured through a slightly different lens rather than a debasing fiat currency. But one thing we do need to acknowledge is if we look at these real returns over the past 5 or so years, they have been underwhelming. Bitcoin really needs to start gaining more of this global pool of wealth to really fulfill its potential. We can't just increase nominally in US dollar terms. We need this true purchasing power shock and this black hole effect on global capital as we suck in all of this invested wealth in other markets. But one thing this also does outline is the cyclical nature of Bitcoin is truly where the real opportunities lie. As much as I do believe in buy and hold, and I'm a proponent of blind dollar cost averaging to some extent, if you are just buying Bitcoin once and leaving it forever, you are leaving a lot on the table, I believe. And I think even just a very basic strategic dollar cost averaging approach, which we try to really outline on this channel by looking at opportunities we see when the market is very much undervalued to get more bang for your buck, and potentially, if you want to, scale out of the market, rotate into other assets when we're maybe getting a little bit and more obviously overheated. If you can do this to any extent, then this is really where the most asymmetric opportunities lie and are available to those sophisticated investors willing to take advantage. But hopefully you enjoyed this analysis, looking at Bitcoin through a slightly different lens and enjoying almost kind of the maths behind Bitcoin's fundamental valuation rather than just looking through the US dollar price chart, which I know can get a little bit tiring. If we do this type of analysis, it's probably a little bit truer to what we're experiencing and how we're feeling and the psychology behind investors. But as always, let me know your thoughts below in the comments and on social media. I do look forward to reading and replying to them. And as always, thank you all very much for watching, and I'll see you in the next one.